We're in the intro. Stand by for countdown. We're 30 seconds out. Twenty seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Good morning and welcome to the Wednesday, January 19th, 2022 Board of Sedgwick County Commission meeting. I'm Akeem Ashford, the Director of Communications. Commissioners, COVID-19 positive cases do continue to rise, so we want to continue updating our citizens on Sedgwick County's continued response to this pandemic. We've got the website pulled up for you again. Quarantine and isolation guidance was recently updated for the general public, including K through 12 schools. Healthcare workers in those part of congregate settings. There are weekly reoccurring mobile clinics happening now through February throughout the county. The Sedgwick County Health Department testing site is increasing capacity to allow for more people to get tested daily. All of this information can be found right here on the Sedgwick County COVID-19 page that we've got pulled up for you here. It's got every tab as well as the isolation and quarantine guidance we just talked about. Commissioners, I am going to rename my office Get Things Done because you asked for a map on the routes for all of the testing, and so we've got that live, and so we're happy to tell you about that now. So each dot, if you click on it, tells you where testing is. So we've got that map on, it's a simple Google search, but you can also find it from the Sedgwick County's homepage as well. Commissioners, give me 1 second, let me grab my agenda. Sorry about that, Commissioners. Looking at today's agenda, you've got a number of appointments. Under new business, Commissioners, you have a resolution amending Chapter 12, Article 3 of the Sedgwick County Code, a resolution amending Chapter 20, Article 4 of the Sedgwick County Code relating to parks, lakes, and recreational facility rules and the enforcement thereof. And then you have a report of boards and bids and contracts. With that, Chairman, I turn the meeting over to you, sir.
Akeem, thank you very much. I want to welcome everyone attending today's meeting for January the 19th. I also want to let everyone know that we will have two off-agenda items in addition to what Akeem briefed this morning. We'll have those two off-agenda items immediately on starting new business, which is before item K, Kilo. In addition, we have an executive session meeting today. So with that, I would like to call the meeting to order for January the 19th. Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Invocation to be observed by a moment of silence. Please remain standing for the flag salute.
Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Roll call. Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz.
Present.
Commissioner Howell.
Present.
Commissioner Lopez.
Present.
Chairman Dennis.
Present. Next item, please.
Public agenda.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we did not have anything coming in on our internet over the evening, but we do have one individual that is ready to speak here. With Mr. Larry Brooks Sr. is here to speak. We'll give you 5 minutes, sir. Welcome to the commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Dennis, and our commission here. My name is Larry Burke Sr. I am retired Lieutenant Colonel of the United States Army, and I'm presently the president for the Wichita branch of the NAACP. I will be making a comment this morning on behalf of our branch concerning a Lofton case, the DA's inability to bring charges in this matter, and the role you can play in impacting change. Our executive team met last night discussing several concerns in this regard. We, like many in this community, are concerned over the facts and circumstances around the death of this 17-year-old African-American youth. Regardless of the circumstances for his being placed in the GIAC facility, his placement there should not have resulted in the loss of his life. Leadership at several levels failed him, his family, and this community. The NAACP is going to be calling for changes at several levels and with several people involved in this matter. They include changes in funding to allow for training with law enforcement officials in dealing with mental health issues, the Stand Your Ground laws, and current legislation in effect, which cited by DA Bennett, which contributed to his inability to make a change or charge, in this case. This body has the power to be instrumental in changes and making those changes effective. We will be addressing specifics in the coming weeks, and we anticipate your positive response and acceptance in the areas where you can make a difference for the best interests of our community and to bring a level of justice to all, particularly in this matter and for his family and again for our community. Thank you very much for your time. Again, like I said before, we will be discussing more of this in our sessions, and we'll be discussing the things that we hope that you can help us make changes for in our community and in the state of Kansas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Larry, for being here today. Thank you for those words. What is your time frame in which you guys think that you're going to get that to us? I look forward to what your expectations are.
We anticipate having a press release ready before the end of this week, and we should be able at that press release to itemize the issues and concerns that we would like to address and solicit the support of this body to help us make those changes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz, or Lopez, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for being here. And, it's just a tragic situation. And so for the work that you guys are doing on your end, I really appreciate that and also look forward to seeing what you come up with. We are starting a community task force, and we were going to reach out to you today. So I'm glad to see you, to see if either you or you would appoint someone to be on this and in these conversations with us. And then what you guys are working on, I'd love you to bring that to this group, and so we can make those changes that are needed at a policy level between the county and city. So we'll be talking to you soon this afternoon, but thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Commissioner Lopez, for that invitation. We would love to be a part of those discussions, and we anticipate bringing meaningful data and information to this as well. Thank you.
Well, again, Mr. Brooks, thank you very much for being here this morning. We appreciate it. We do hope that you are part of this task force that we're creating so that we can take a look at everything that happened all the way across the board.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Dennis. Appreciate it all.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't have anyone else signed up, so we'll go on to the next item. Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Consideration of minutes. Item A. Regular meeting minutes of January 5th, 2022.
Commissioners, everyone's had an opportunity to review the minutes from January 5th. I have not heard of any changes. If there aren't any, I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner,
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Howell,
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next item, please.
Appointments. Item B, accept the resignation of Sabrina Shoemaker from the District 4 Citizens Advisory Board.
Mr. Papoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Papoon, County Councilor. Item B is a resignation of Sabrina Shoemaker. We'd ask that you accept the resignation.
Are we able to take more than one, or we're just going to do one at a time?
Well, there's only one resignation, there's four
Okay.
appointments. I was going to
Very
do the
good.
four appointments together.
All right. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Papoon. Sabrina Shoemaker, I would like to thank for her service. Citizens Advisory Boards are kind of time-consuming if you do them right, and she had some other things come up, so I want to thank her for her service and make a motion to accept the resignation of Sabrina Shoemaker.
I'll second it. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner,
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell,
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next item, please.
Item C, resolution appointing Rebecca Osborne to the Sedgwick County 4th District Citizens Advisory Board.
Mr. Papoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, if it please the commission, we'll go ahead and take items C, D, E, and F altogether. They are four appointments to Commissioner Cruz's 4th District Citizens Advisory Board. She is recommending the appointments of Rebecca Osborne, Mark Masterson, Ronald Colbert Sr., and Nicole Lee, and all the resolutions are in proper form, and ask that you approve the resolutions.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Rebecca Osborne, Mark Masterson, Ron Colbert Sr., and Nicole Lee to the District 4 Citizens Advisory Board. I appreciate their willingness to serve and would make that motion.
Thank you. I'll second the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner,
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell,
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Item G, resolution reappointing Alex Dean to the Sedgwick County Solid Waste Management Committee in the first class city position number 1.
Thank you. What we noticed last evening was that we have one more Class 1 city in Sedgwick County. We've known it for some time, but we just kind of picked it up last night as we were reviewing this. And as a result, the city of Derby really has an opportunity to appoint someone to this. So what I'd like to do today is to pass this resolution, and then we'll have staff contact the city of Derby and ask them if they would like to also serve on this committee. And if so, we'll have another resolution prepared for the next meeting have to change the composition of the board, but at the same time, we can make the appointment of whoever that they want at that time. So I'll turn it over to Commissioner Howell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question for manager. Email I got, I think, from you on this talked about a deferment of this. We would actually clean this up and bring it back clean without having to redo it. Is that what you recommended?
It's an option, Commissioner. Mike sent an email earlier this morning also. We could accept this today as is and bring back an amendment adding a Derby representative at our next meeting. We can do it either way. We can either defer today and bring it all back at once, or you can accept today and we'll reach out to Derby and get an appointment for next meeting.
I don't really have a strong preference either way, but it just seems like, I don't know, they don't meet very often, I don't think. So by passing this today, is there a meeting that's close? Do we know?
I don't know that, Commissioner, if there is, it might be prudent to go ahead and make this appointment today. We reach out to Derby. If there is a meeting that would be beforehand, we could bring that back to commission for an appointment. Our next scheduled meeting is not till February, so we don't have a meeting next Wednesday. So I don't know, and I don't know if Jim Weber's behind me or not, or somebody that can answer the question of whether there's a meeting or not. But
Well, since we don't know, I guess it's reasonable to go ahead and lean forward on item G today and expect some type of amendment to this when we come back in February. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adopt the resolution making the appointment of Alex Dean to the Solid Waste Management Committee for the appointment of first-class city position number 1.
Thank you. I'll second the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Meitzner,
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz,
Aye.
Commissioner Howell,
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez,
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next item, please.
Item H, resolution appointing Susie Cunningham to the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission.
Mr. Papoon.
Mr. Chairman, we can take items H, I, and J together if it's the will of the board. They all three involve appointments to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. Item H is Commissioner Cruise's recommendation for appointing Susie Cunningham to this board. Item I believe, is a reappointment of Bill Johnson on behalf of the chairman, Commissioner Dennis. And item J is Joshua Blick, who will be Commissioner Lopez's appointment to this board also, but this is actually a reappointment of Joshua Blick. So all three resolutions are in proper form, and ask you adopt the three resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. Papoon. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. I am more than excited to appoint Susie Cunningham. I did have a plethora of applications, and so I appreciate the community really engaging in wanting to be a part of this board. Susie Cunningham is instrumental in many neighborhood efforts and one of the most engaged citizens, especially in Riverside. It is with great pleasure that I would appoint her to this board. And so with that, Chairman, I'm not sure at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion to adopt H, I, and J.
Thank you, and I'll second that. And I'll also state that Bill Johnson is my appointee, and he is actually the chairman of that organization right now. This is one of the most important nominations that we make because of the control of that board. So I appreciate each of them wanting to serve. Commissioner Cruz, Commissioner Lopez, the light's on the wrong side.
Well, and I'm reappointing Joshua Blick, and I want to thank him as well for everything he's done. I really appreciate if something comes up in my district, he reaches out to me and lets me know kind of what the conversation was like, and just gives me a little bit more of that background. And so I do appreciate that and look forward to continuing that relationship. So thank you, Josh.
Thank you. I don't see any other comments. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner,
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz,
Aye.
Commissioner Howell,
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez,
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next item, please.
New business.
Very
Item Q.
good. With new business, as I stated at the beginning of this meeting, we're going to have two off-agenda items this morning. And the first off-agenda item deals with mandatory vaccination. So we will go with that first. So,
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to go ahead and Anna will take the podium here, and I think can talk us through this. But Sheena Schmutz, our Chief Human Resource Officer, is also on the phone if there are questions.
oh,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
I agree. Apologize. I make a motion we have two off-agenda items today. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner,
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz,
Aye.
Commissioner Howell,
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez,
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Now, we're ready.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kevin Stamper, Assistant County Counselor. I'm here to provide a little bit of the background for how we got here and what we're going to be considering, and then Anna will present that from the HR perspective. On September the 9th, the Biden administration announced an executive order, and it was going to impose mandates that would be imposed by OSHA and by CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Studies. The CMS mandate was to apply basically to most institutions that receive Medicare and Medicaid funding. We worked for about the first week after the November 5th issuance of the mandate order to go over and try and figure out exactly what was going to be covered and what within the county might not be covered. And Tim Kaufman and I probably spent 20 hours that week in attending seminars, guidance with CMS officials, and trying to determine just how narrowly is this going to be tailored. Well, the Supreme Court kind of answered that question for us when they overruled the injunctive relief that was preventing the Medicare/Medicaid mandate from going into place. The rationale in the Supreme Court decision was basically, well, if you're going to accept Medicare and Medicaid funding, and we do here in the county to the tune of about $11.8 million a year, then you're going to be subject to whatever CMS says that the mandate is. So in examining that, we determined that ComCare was going to be covered by the mandate and required to have mandatory vaccinations just by operation of the actual wording of the mandate. The problem is that the health department is also going to be covered by this, and that's by virtue of the operations of the health department. So we had to move forward. There has been a delay in terms of the enforcement of this pending the Supreme Court decision that came down last week. And the delay is now, we now have our deadlines. We have to have a plan in place by the 27th of this month, and the vaccination mandate must be fully implemented by the 28th of next month. So, is there any questions?
Any questions from legal? Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Chairman. As we get started here, just a point of order. I have two documents in front of me. This first off-agenda item, is it referring to both of these documents right now, or are these being handled separately, or? First agenda item, is this for both these documents?
Are those the policies and procedures?
I have a resolution amending the personnel policies and procedures. Another one implementing the failure to comply COVID-19 mandatory vaccine policy.
Anna Meyerhoff-Cole, Deputy Chief Human Resources Officer. You are only approving the policy today. The procedures document is just a supplemental working document for staff.
Okay. So just a couple quick questions here. So I understand that EMS and fire are not covered by this. They're exempt from this policy?
That's correct.
Okay. And I assume that's also true for, so the only ones really being pulled into this right now are ComCare and our health department?
Correct.
So if they provide services, let's say healthy babies, for example, or WIC benefits, are they also part of this policy, or are they outside the policy?
My reading of the policy suggests they are outside of it. The only reason that CMHC's community mental health centers are specifically listed as a covered entity within the mandate itself. The health department is subject to it because we have clinics, and we go ahead and provide services through those. And it's by operation of those that we are subject to the mandate.
I guess my question is, let me restate my question. Those particular programs I just mentioned, for example, Healthy Babies and WIC benefits, they report to our director, Adrian Byrne. And so technically they're part of the health department umbrella, but they don't necessarily work in that building. They don't know where they may be out in the community providing services out in the community. So I'm just trying to determine whether or not, again, those are also mostly grant funded. And so with that in mind, I wanted to clarify whether or not we can confirm that they're not part of this policy.
I don't believe that they would be at this time, and part of the reason is that those functions, answering to Adrian, could be conducted via remote access. So if they're not entering the building on a frequent basis, they would probably not be subject to the mandate. The people that go to the building are going to be subject.
If they work in the building.
Right.
It's not just working in the building, it's providing services within the community. The only people that would not be included in the mandate is if they are 100% remote and not interacting with the public or other staff.
Okay, so this is, for example, so the administration in the building, the ComCare building, it maybe has nothing to do with any actual clients, but they're providing some type of administrative work, let's say in the ComCare facility. They would also be under this.
Correct.
maybe another question for you as well. So the February 27th is the first of the 2 dates. And January 27th, is it?
Yes.
That's the first of the 2 dates. And so if someone intends to get the J&J potentially, and they wanted to wait until the very last moment, February 27th, what happens after that January date? Are they able to work normally and make that final decision, I guess, right before the end of February?
Yes.
So there's nothing, so they're, because they have maybe not received the first of the 2-dose Moderna Pfizer regimen, we might let them know that they're in this, unless they get the J&J at that point, they're out of options at that point. So they would have no way to go back to Pfizer and Moderna and get caught back up again because it requires so many days between vaccines, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And yesterday we talked about this in our staff meeting. You said there's about 550 employees altogether, we believe,
Yes.
that are part of this pool.
Approximately,
And
yes.
do you think you'll have, is it our intention to kind of get a status of this very quickly so we can kind of find out how many people we're talking about potentially terminating?
Yes, we can provide you that update. As of right now, we don't even know how many employees are vaccinated. So as we start collecting this information, we can provide that data to you.
How many ComCare employees are we down today? We have a pretty big deficit of employees, don't we, right now?
Good morning, Commissioners. Tim Cochran, Deputy County Manager. We have roughly 330 filled positions right now at ComCare and around 200, 210 at the Health Department.
Okay. I know of one person in the community that's receiving ComCare services, and they do it remotely. I don't know where the ComCare person actually is. I don't know where they are, but their interface with the client is done through a Zoom meeting of some sort, okay? I would like to accommodate these employees as much as we possibly can. I hate to see us terminate employees that we absolutely need. Mental health is being our #1 priority here in Sedgwick County, and we have such a huge deficit of people already. It just breaks my heart to think we're going to be terminating a large group of employees potentially. And so I'd like to do everything we possibly can to accommodate them. And to me, termination is something I really don't want to see that happen. I'm torn between voting against this because I don't like the mandate. By the way, I have been vaccinated. I even had my booster, so I'm not against the vaccine personally. I don't like the mandate, and the reality is we all have our own choices. And as much as I might disagree with someone else's choices, I don't want to see someone terminated over that. And I know we need them very much. We need our employees. So I'm torn between voting against this, although this is federal, and so there's the danger of taking $11.8 million of federal money as they control us. So it frustrates me. This is services that our community absolutely needs. If we don't do this, our community loses services. And I just think that's terrible, that the federal government puts us in a position that we would actually threaten our community with loss of services if we don't accept a mandate. I think that's terrible. So part of me wants to vote against this. I'll just say this, I'll vote for it today, but I want to do everything I possibly can to fight for our employees. And if we absolutely have to lose an employee, my goal is to not lose them, but to get them to a position where they can comply with the technical requirements of this mandate and keep them on because we need them very, very much here. So to our employees, I want them to know I'm fighting for you, and I will do everything I can to keep them a Sedgwick County employee. So with that, I will reluctantly vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't see any other comments, but I want to reiterate exactly what Commissioner Howell said. I didn't think I was ever going to be voting for a vaccine mandate, which kind of goes against what I believe in. But I believe in the vaccine. I've had the booster. I've had COVID before any of that. So I think it's the right thing to do to get a vaccine. But as far as mandating it, I do have a little bit of problem with that. But if we don't pass this, as Commissioner Howell said, we have the opportunity, well, not the opportunity, the risk of losing about $11 million of support to our community, and we can't afford to do that. I also agree with Commissioner Howell that if we do have to fire any of the employees based on this mandate, that we find some other place that they can work within Sedgwick County. So with that, I will reluctantly make a motion that we approve the vaccine mandate as directed, as written up by our HR department.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Thank you. And we did have a motion for two off-agenda items. And so what I'd like to do is go into the second off-agenda item. And each of the commissioners have a document that was prepared this morning by our communications department. So please, Keem, if you could please read that document into the record so that everyone knows what we're going to be talking about.
Absolutely. Chairman, Keem Asher, Communications Director. The letter reads as such: the Sedgwick County Board of County Commissioners supports the formation of a joint medical health campus in the heart of Wichita. We strongly urge for increased funding to allow the KU School of Medicine Wichita, WSU, and WSU Digital Innovation Campus to relocate into the core of downtown Wichita. We believe we can overcome the roadblock of lack of funding by using the governor's budget, state, and any other potential infrastructure buckets of money to achieve this initiative. At minimum, partners in this venture will include, with additional partners signing on in the future, Kansas University Medical School, Wichita State University Technical School, City of Wichita, Sedgwick County, State of Kansas, and those are bulleted commissioners. Lastly, on behalf of the Sedgwick County Board of County Commissioners, I strongly ask that you join us in achieving this common goal of creating a healthcare campus in the heart of our community, and this is to be signed by the chairman.
Thank you, Keem. Mr. Manager, do you have anything else to add?
Chairman, I was part of a phone conversation with Wichita State University officials last Friday, and the topic was this really an exciting project to explore the formation of a medical health hub campus within this region, within the city of Wichita, with the three main partners being Kansas School of Medicine, Wichita State University, and WSU Tech. The concept, and it is still just a concept, is to combine the strength of the KU Medical School with the digital engineering know-how of Wichita State University, which they have displayed prominently in our community the last year or two, into a single campus setting inside of Wichita. This potentially groundbreaking end product could be a great addition to our region and our state, both from an economic development perspective and a service force for people. We at the county should have an interest in this because it could offer opportunities for partnership with our public health department, our mental health component, ComCare, and with our aging components. Wichita State is asking for this letter of support from the commission as they move forward. It's a very interesting topic.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. Commissioner Meitzner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom, you did a nice job of summarizing where it's at today. I'm familiar with this effort to move forward on this. A question, a couple of comments. Whom are we making this out to? Who are we addressing this to?
I think it would go to the governor's office, perhaps, or our state delegation. And we could ask Wichita State. I think we just want to put it on record that we support this. I think the city is going, if they haven't already done that, we'll do the same thing. But I think it should be destined for the governor's office to start with.
And copy the leadership of the okay. I think I've heard that it's called a medical health science campus. We don't have the word science in there because it's a school also. I don't know for sure. First time I've seen the letter, so I'm.
Yeah, we can make that change.
Would you agree that haven't they been saying health science campus?
Sure.
That's what I thought. And then using the governor's budget, comma, state, and any other, I would say state, comma, ARPA funds and any other funds. I would add ARPA in there if that's all right, because it could be a state ARPA and could be asking of our local ARPA, if that's all right. I'd just throw that out there.
Okay.
Don't know if that's appropriate or not, but that
Certainly.
was my 2 comments. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with the comments of the previous speaker, but just a little bit further, if this is to the governor, the list of supporters on this includes the state of Kansas. Is that presumptive? I mean, do we want to include them on this statement if we don't have their buy-in at this point?
In the conversation last week, this has been discussed with local legislators and senators. There is local support from this, from some contingency of our local delegation. I think a key component to this, even we've been talking about this for 2, 3, 4 years. It was always, the roadblock was always money. And now with the fiscal position of the state, with the presence of ARPA dollars, with the presence of infrastructure dollars coming in, it looks like this might actually happen. So I think whatever, we send it to whoever has control, and maybe it would be the Spark team, for example, that has control over the ARPA dollars for the state. I think I think it could be sent to a number of entities.
I just think to include the state of Kansas, it sounds like they voted on this, because it's kind of an overarching opinion. If you want to say delegates from the leadership of the state of Kansas, or I don't know how you want to say change it, but to me it's a little bit presumptive. If stated that way, to me it asks questions to, what do you mean by that? So I think you need to clean that up just a little bit, in my personal opinion.
Let me make sure I'm hearing you right, Commissioner. Maybe we say potentially the state of Kansas, or just remove the state of Kansas from that.
I think you could add some adjectives there and potentially still keep it, but I would be very clear on those. Did the South Central delegation support this? Did the leadership in the House and Senate support this? I don't know. I'd be a little more specific on who you're talking about, because just by saying state of Kansas, I would assume there's a vote.
No, okay.
There's a vote, so to me, I think if I was in the state of Kansas, and I saw this document, I thought to myself, we didn't talk about this, why are you putting my name essentially on this? Not that they would disagree, I just think it's a little bit disrespectful perhaps. I think we need to clean it up a little bit.
Okay.
And the second comment I'm sorry. I apologize, my mic was off. The second question I would have is since this is from the chairman, again, to be respectful to the entire board here, if we vote on this today, it should be, we strongly ask that you join us, not I, if that's an acceptable change. But to me, that's a small thing. And then I guess my final question would be this. We have a brand new downtown school of osteopathy, I think, that just is in the verge of becoming open. Does that in any way meet some of the concerns and needs of this letter? And is this competition to what's in the process of opening right now?
I think the discussion, and remember this is very conceptual at this time, the discussion we had on Friday indicated that the DO school would clearly be part of the team of this. I don't think that they would be in conflict with one another. And the school that they're building down there is technologically advanced. And I think that there is a full intention by the partners in this particular project to reach out to that DO school for some type of collaboration.
Okay, I just want to be careful there. There's been a huge investment. We're all celebrating right now that new school opening up. I don't want to somehow look like we're not supporting them in some way. I think we need to support them. Along that line, I think also it's been a long-standing discussion in our state that there's not a dental school. I don't think there's a dental school in our state that I'm aware of. If there is one, I'm not sure, but there needs to be a dental school, I think, in this area. Can we add the idea of dental as a specific thing we're looking for here? Because there's a huge dental service provider shortage in our state. And I just think we need to find a way to solve that. And right now there seems to be nothing brewing out there to make that happen. So I know we're talking about medical here, but I would add the word dental, because dental is a pretty big part of our physical health. So
I think we could make that part of the discussion as we move forward. I don't know that we make it part of this letter, but you've gone way outside of any authority I think that we have. I think KU would have to be consulted on that. Wichita State would have to be consulted.
And again, they do also stand to be the primary KU School of Medicine is probably going to be the primary benefactor if we're successful in doing this, getting this done. They're the ones that are going to probably set that up and have that expanded services, expanded school here. So,
I
no
think
offense, no offense to them, but I think this is bigger than just one school. Go ahead.
I think that Wichita State and WSU Tech would stand to, it would be highly beneficial, not only for our region and our city and our county, but for Wichita State Tech, and KU Med. I think they're equal partners in this endeavor.
All right, well, that's all my comments. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Lopez?
Thank you. When we're adding anything about ARPA, can we check with Lindsay just to make sure that we're not
Yes,
crossing any lines there?
yes.
Okay,
we will.
thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of just questions around, so what, is there a way to add what the focus would be? If the DO school has its focus, is this a focus on what kind of medicine? I mean, is this a doctoral program? Is this the bachelor's program? Is this nursing? I mean, kind of to Commissioner Howe's point about dentistry, and not that we want to get real specific, but is there a way to talk in general? Is this going to focus on all of our health? Like, is this pediatric to geriatric? Is this women's health? Like, what could potentially be the focus of this? And is there a way to sort of add something like that so that it isn't so vague and we're going to have a medical school down here, but we're not going to say what level of degree we're going to provide and then what services, what level of, what education we're going to provide? Is there any way to, I mean, surely there's some sort of focus on that.
Well, I would be glad to reach out to Wichita State and ask for better language to go into more detail on that. During the discussion on Friday, and remember this is conceptual, was to bring their medical school component, their nursing component, all the components they have in their current satellite here at KU Med, to bring that to bear on this project. They didn't talk about expansion. The paradigm shift here is we're going to bring Wichita State into this discussion with digital transformation and robotics and all the things that Wichita State is really good at into this medical school setting. And then from our perspective, what does that offer us as far as a health department component, a mental health component, an aging component? So all of this is going to be discussed. This is just a conceptual agreement amongst commissioners that you like the idea, that we support the idea, and that we want to publicly say that we like the idea. And all of these other kinds of details, I think, will bear out over the next several months and years as this project comes to fruition, if there's funding available.
Sure, and I absolutely understand this as a concept, but I would gather that there would be some sort of focus that, because this just seems very vague, you know, and so I absolutely wholeheartedly support this. I guess I would just like to have a little bit more focus so that, you know, when these questions are asked by legislators, what gap is this going to fill? Who is going to be targeted? What level of degree will be offered? I think those are important distinctions that could help move this along, and maybe eliminate the need for a lot of other questions. Should something like, I would just like to support something that isn't so vague.
Okay.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was good to hear the feedback from my fellow commissioners. I can address a couple of things as I understand it. I agree with Tom on the dental portion. That's kind of outside the scope of what we've been approached with. But I'm in agreement that a dental school is needed somewhere in Kansas, but that's not part of this deal that I understand. Also, there is cooperation and consultation between this venture and the DO school. So they're not separately competing from what I understand. And as far as the state of Kansas being one of the bullets, I think if we took the sentence right before that, at a minimum, partners in this venture could include, instead of will include, would satisfy all those. And then lastly, I don't believe that I'm not aware that KU School Med, WSU, I know WSU Tech's involved. I don't know that they've at a point to determine exactly what degrees and which areas of science are going to be. So I think it's intentional that we keep this in general and somewhat vague and not specific to a specific doctoral program. That's to be determined. So if, from my opinion, if the commission wants more detail and doesn't like what a letter like this in support, then we could pass on it. But I would be supportive of this letter signed by the chairman on behalf of us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well, Commissioner Meitzen and I were on the call along with Tom, with Dr. Muma and Andy Schlapp last Friday, and they're just looking for general support right now to see if the time is right. As Tom said, in the past, we could not move forward on this because we didn't have the funding to move forward. And now there is funding that is out there available. I agree that the DO school needs to be considered as they move forward, but again, that's on trying to get to the specifics. What this letter is designed for is general support of WSU's ask. One of the things that Dr. Muma mentioned when he was on the call with us is that Wichita is one of the 100 largest cities in the United States. And the cities that are growing the fastest are those that have some type of a medical school downtown. And there are only 2 of those largest cities in the entire United States that do not have that, and Wichita is one of those 2 cities. So if we want to continue to be competitive, we want to continue our economic development, we want to continue growth of this region, we truly need this medical school downtown. And again, I appreciate that we don't have a lot of specifics at this time because we don't have money yet. And so a lot of it is whether or not that we are going to have the funding in order to be able to move forward with this concept. So that's what this is designed for, is to say, hey, this is something that we need in order to be able to continue to be competitive, in order to continue to grow, and we can work out the more details as we move forward. So, Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to make sure that my words aren't minced. I do support this concept, wholeheartedly do support this concept. I was not on the call, and I was given an email asking for a support letter that, in my opinion, was vague, and that is what I'm expressing right now. So I was not on that call. I didn't get the opportunity to ask questions like this, and so that's why I'm asking them now. And that's where I stand on this. I do support this concept, but I think it's important to understand that those will be questions that will be asked. And so I wonder what is the timeline for how this will go about? Is this the first step to get support from the state? And then what would be the timeline of the creation of this? What does the timeline look like? That's kind of my question. Was that something that was addressed on the call that you guys would address now?
It was not. I think this is a first step to try to obtain funding and to get. I think we look at this like we look at the North Junction process. We have a need. There's a group of people that collaborate and create partnerships and move ahead in unison, obtain funding from any source, and get a project. I think this is an NCAT level or a North Junction level of project for this community. And so I view this as a very, even before a step one, this is a very preliminary step just to kind of mobilize the effort to make this a priority in the state and to try to obtain funding. And then I think all of the rest of this, as Commissioner Meitzer mentioned, will come to bear as it moves forward. So I have no problem contacting Dr. Muma or Andy out at Wichita State to get, if we can clean this up and make it less vague, to articulate better, and I would be glad to make that call after the meeting.
Okay. Well, I don't see any other questions. What I'd like to do is make a motion that we allow the chairman to sign out a letter of support for the WSU's concept as we move forward with more decisions to be made in the future on how that we move forward. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Next item, please.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry, Commissioner Howell.
Mr. Chairman, this is going kind of fast, and I apologize, but I have some questions about the first agenda item that we just put on the off-agenda item. Would it be acceptable for me to ask a couple more questions about this, just so I understand? Would that be acceptable, Chairman?
Certainly.
Thank you. I know that they left the room, but let me ask a question. So yesterday in the staff meeting, we talked about definitions of fully vaccinated. And they said fully vaccinated did not include boosters. And so I see on the page 3, top of the page of the proposed policy here, it says booster vaccination documentation. Employees who have received a COVID-19 booster immunization must also submit documentation. Is that a condition for continued employment? If it's not a condition, why are we demanding, if you will, or mandating that they disclose their booster status?
Without Kevin or Anna here, and I think Sheena has hung up, I will check on that, Commissioner. I think that if they've been boosted, it might be part of their record. It is definitely not a mandatory component of this mandate that we're all wrestling with here. I don't believe it is. I think it's just shots 1 and 2 or a single dose Johnson & Johnson.
So I would like to recommend, maybe it's not a motion, but I just need to clean this up. It's went kind of quick this morning. The information under letter C, I think should be eliminated from this policy because it doesn't actually, it's not a condition of employment,
Okay.
as far as I know. So if it's not a condition of employment, then it shouldn't be a part of this policy.
Chairman, if I could ask, if we could bring this back, go to the next agenda item, let me get staff back in the room, address Commissioner Howell's
And if you
questions.
bring them back, that's great, because I actually have one more question after that. So let's just get to those 2 questions when they come back. Thank you so much.
If that's okay, Chairman.
I'm sorry.
If you could ask staff to come back into the room, and we'll answer that. We'll come back to it.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Manager.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Item K, a resolution amending Chapter 12, Article 3 of the Sedgwick County Code.
Chief, you briefing?
Good morning, Commissioners. Doug Williams, Fire Chief.
Good morning, Chief.
And we've talked about this in the past at the staff meeting. So I wanted to give a couple highlights to get going on the driveway code so we can get it reduced. The driveway code was originally adopted by the Board of County Commissioners in 2004. It was done with the Board of Commissioners, and they had a committee that worked with them at the time to come up with this code. And from my memory and what I've been told is that code was mainly directed at houses that were more than 200 feet away from the road, but yet not a lot further, maybe up to 400, 500 feet. Which brings us in on that driveway code for a 1 and 2 family dwelling. It was a 20 feet wide driveway, and beyond that, if you had agricultural buildings, an outbuilding, a garage, a barn, then you had to have a 14-foot driveway beyond the original driveway to the home. The driveway had to be 20 foot wide. It has to be a minimum of 4 inches deep, thick of the rock, gravel, asphalt. I think they're using a lot of that broke up concrete anymore, but it's a 4-inch thick depth. It was brought to us to look at this because we're having a lot of homes that are being built much further away from the roadway than what used to be. And that they felt that the 20-foot wide for houses maybe 1,000, 1,200, even 1,500 feet back away from the roadway was a little bit costly for a 20-foot wide driveway. So we worked with WABA. Wes Gallion worked with us on this, and we had 2 different presentations at the Board of Codes and Standards Appeals. And back in August, they voted to adopt. We made the presentation to a change. And what we're going to do, what we felt would still provide us with effective and adequate firefighting ability and, but yet we could reduce down further. We can lay hose up to about 800 foot off of most of our engines and quints. So if we can get everybody within 200 foot of the house, we feel that's an effective method to get there. So once that first engine lays down that roadway, we have to have a wide driveway to get the rest, the second and third engines and the support apparatus in there. So we went with that 800 feet, and we said, okay, if we can get within 600 feet, then we will reduce that 20-foot driveway requirement to 600 feet maximum. So the decision was made, if it's 800 foot or less driveway, you only have to have that 20-foot drive for the first 600 feet. And after 600 feet, then you didn't have to, we can get there close enough. The other thing we looked at is if a house is going to be beyond 800 feet, we're not going to lay hose down that driveway. So we could reduce that driveway to 14 feet as long as there's pull-offs. They call them turnouts, or I call them passing lanes. But as long as there's a pull-off every 500 feet for our apparatus to be able to pass each other on a tender shuttle or a water shuttle, we said that on a 14-foot driveway, it could be 14 feet the whole distance. If it's 1,000 feet, it could be 14 feet from the beginning, well, after the turn-in. It could be 14 feet, and we didn't need to have that 20-foot wide driveway in that case. So that's what we ended up working with BCSA and WABA and got their support on to reduce the 20-foot requirement after 600 foot on, if it's less than 800 foot. And if it's beyond 800 foot, then it'll be 14 foot the whole distance after the turn-in.
Very good. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it. And I've spoken with WABA several times about this subject myself, directly with Wes over there. And he is definitely supportive of this compromise, actually. And I think it makes sense. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I've been talking about this for a number of years now. I appreciate having the chance to do this in a meeting and actually hopefully make some change here. But one of the things I've tried to do as a commissioner is try to reduce burdensome regulations, costly regulations that don't necessarily enhance quality of life or whatever. Now, if someone has a fire, they're going to be glad to have a wide driveway. Don't get me wrong. If someone has a fire in their home, they're going to wish they had a sprinkler system in their home, which is an option, but most people don't have that because it's fairly expensive. I would assume if you have a sprinkler system in your home, it might lower your rates of insurance because you have mitigations built into your structure. But this is one of those things. I wish we would recommend something rather than mandate this. And here's a couple of my concerns here. There's a moment in time. It's a snapshot in time when someone builds I assume if they redo their driveway and get a permit or whatever. It's permitted and inspected. Usually when under new construction, there's going to be a moment in time where they have to meet this standard. And it's not just, I don't know if it's in here or not, but it's not just the width and also the thickness of the gravel. It's also overhead height clearance. Is that correct?
Yes, the clearance, if they put a gate or an entry gate like some of them do, it has to be 13 foot 6 inches, which is normal roadway height for a bridge or high line.
So one of my, when you just started talking a moment ago, you said, I think I heard what you said was homes that used to be 250 feet to 500 feet from the road required a 20-foot driveway. Is that what you said earlier?
No, I said that I believe, my personal belief is when they designed the code, it was built because people were going beyond 200 feet back. And at that time, we were looking at houses that were 300, 400, 500 feet back. But now what's changed is they're not doing that 300, 400. Now they're doing 1,700 feet, 1,500 feet. And that's creating quite some anger from people that are going back that far.
I can imagine. So to be clear, if they go back 1,500 feet today, without this change, it would be required to be 20 feet wide the entire distance.
That's correct.
From the road all the way back. So this is deregulation in a small way. It's reducing the requirements for these longer driveways. So if you have an excessively long driveway, you can have some relief in this regulation. It's slightly less burdensome than it maybe would be without this change.
That's correct.
So for that reason, I would vote for it. But I would just say this once again. I think that if you drive around the country, around the county, you'll see driveways all over the place that are there, been there for a long time. Most people drive kind of in the middle of the driveway, and eventually, over time, the ground cover kind of encroaches the driveway, and it begins to look like the tire tracks, one on the left, one on the right. And you drive down the tire tracks, and that's what you see most of the places. So maybe there's a moment in time where we required a 20-foot wide driveway, but we don't inspect that and require that after it's constructed. Even at transfer. So if you transfer from one owner to the next, like we used to do with water wells and wastewater septic systems and things like that, you used to require a transfer inspection. This doesn't require a transfer inspection. So it's really a moment in time when it's constructed. That's the only time that this standard is actually being met. And after that, it's up to the homeowner at that point to maintain whatever it is they want to do there. So it's a fairly expensive requirement. We have some regulations where we recommend certain, enhancements or mitigations, but we require certain things that may be a little bit less than that. So, if I could get what I really wanted here, I'd say 14 feet would be the length of the driveway. We'd recommend to 20, maybe to these other, these higher, for a certain distance, 20 would be recommended, but 14 should be what's required. That's not what this is. So we're going to require 20 feet. Up to 800 feet. I actually know a guy right now building a house today. He's going to set his house 801 feet just because of this. So, it's not. It's not. It's not going to solve all the problems. I guess I'll just say that. It's a baby step in the right direction. I'll say up front. Obviously, I support our public safety. Public safety is number one in my book. Everybody and everything in public safety is top of my list. I want everyone to be safe, and I certainly don't want any of our residents to suffer loss, especially loss of life, because they can't get fire protection services when that worst day of their life comes to them, a house fire would happen. So with that, I do want to make sure we have things in place to protect the firefighters and protect the occupants of these homes. I just wish it was. Let me give you one example. A while back, we talked about CO detectors and how many CO detectors were going to be required in a home and where they would have to be. We pushed back on that. We did not do what was recommended initially because it wasn't something that was adopted everywhere. It was above the standards, and so we actually, if you will, adopted a lesser standard. But we recommend, if you will, more CO detectors in your home. It's a good idea, but we don't mandate that. So. There's lots of examples out there. I'll reluctantly vote yes, but it's a step in the right direction. It's just not what I think it needs to be, and I'm a little bit disappointed that we're settling for this. I appreciate WABA's input, but I would have liked to have been part of those conversations and find out, does everybody understand, I guess, what happens in other counties? As far as you correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but in other counties across our state, we have different standards everywhere. This is our standard for Sedgwick County, but other counties may do it completely differently. And I think we're a little bit on the more regulatory side. We require a little bit more than perhaps other counties around the state. And so you're welcome to correct me if I'm wrong there.
No, our regulation on the driveway is one of the strongest.
Yeah. And with that, regulations cost money, and regulations, they're very well intended, but it's also a financial burden. So I'll reluctantly vote yes, but it's a step in the right direction. It's just not all I wish it would. All I wish it was being presented today. But thank you for the chance to speak, Chairman.
Well, thank you. I don't see any other questions. I don't know exactly where Commissioner Howell is going on inspections and transfer, but I would not support adding something with transfer or inspections periodically. So I think that it's written correctly as we have it at the current time. Commissioner Howell, do you have something else?
I just want to clarify. I'm not suggesting we would do that. I'm not asking for more regulations. I'm just making the point that this is a moment in time. A house may be constructed and be sitting there for 100 years, and for one moment when it's inspected, it hits this standard, and after that, it's whatever the homeowner does, and which is what is happening everywhere. So again, I think it's up to the homeowner to make sure that they have the enhancements the way that they want them. They accept risk. They provide mitigations. as a homeowner should. I'm just making a point that everybody else isn't following the standard, and that's fine. But for anything that's brand new construction, for one moment in time, we hit the standard. It's very expensive, and I don't know that we need to do it this way. That's my point, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I don't see any other comments. I appreciate WABA's input on this. I appreciate our fire department working the issues involved in trying to make sure that we're protecting our firefighters and millions of dollars worth of equipment that we send down those roads. So I make a motion that we adopt the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Item L, a resolution amending Chapter 20, Article 4 of the Sedgwick County Code relating to parks, lakes, and recreational facility rules and the enforcement thereof.
Good morning,
Mark.
Commissioners. Mark Shrove, Park Superintendent. I'm here today seeking approval of a proposed fee changes and a couple of rule additions to help govern the parks. Our fee structure, how we come about these increases, we monitor our competitors on a regular basis, and it appears about every 3 years we need to make adjustments to bring our prices up to what the market is. The two rule changes proposed is for addressing unsightly campsites, and we're going to reinstate a stay limit at the park for camping. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to entertain them.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. The only thing I saw in this that kind of bothered me a little bit, but I can live with it, was, and I spoke to you about it earlier, 300 days seems like an awful lot of days for someone to be camping out there at Sedgwick County Park. It's almost like a trailer park when we start getting, there's only 365 days in a year, so for 65 days they can't camp there. So please monitor that situation as we move forward, because it's not intended to be a permanent residence out there. So that's the only comment I have, and I don't see any other comments at this time. So I make a motion that we adopt the resolution.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. And we'll do the next item and then come back to the discussion on vaccination. Okay, next item, please.
Item M, report of the bids and contracts regular meeting on January 13th, 2022.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and
Morning, Joe.
Commissioners. Joe Thomas, Purchasing Director. The regular meeting of the Board of Bids and Contracts on January 13th results in two items that we're seeking your approval. The first item is a bridge replacement for Public Works. It's noted as Project B496, which is a bridge replacement on 183rd Street West between 45th and 53rd Streets North. The recommendation is to accept the low bid from King Construction Company Incorporated, and that's in the amount of $731,375.43. Our last item is Liebert Air Handlers, the air conditioning units that Emergency Communications and Division of Information Technology is seeking. This recommendation is to accept the quote from Vertiv Corporation, and it's for a 3-year total of $230,367.03. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you may have, and I recommend approval.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. I don't see any questions this time. I move that we approve the Board of Bids and Contracts. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Aye. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Joe. At this time, I make a motion that we reopen the off-agenda item dealing with vaccines.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez. Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Howell, I'll turn it back over to you for the questions.
Well, thank you so much, Chairman. Since we're back on this topic, let me start with my initial question here, which was the booster vaccination documentation under on page 3, top of the page. It says, employees who have received a COVID-19 booster immunization must also submit documentation following the procedure. The question is this. We talked, I think yesterday, the definition of full vaccination was 2 doses of Moderna or Pfizer or 1 dose of J&J. Did not include the booster. Is that correct?
Correct. However, the mandate does require that we have a process and that we securely document any staff that receive a booster, even though it is not part of the consideration for them being fully vaccinated at this time.
This is our policy, though, correct?
Yes, but that puts us in line with the mandate, and our policy is required to be in line with the mandate.
So what I'm seeing here then is, if they get a booster, it's a personal choice. If they get a booster, they must submit documentation. There's no choice. They must do that as a condition of employment.
If they get a booster, they must submit it in the portal, but they are not required to get a booster.
Yeah, see, this doesn't really make sense to me. I guess you hear what I'm saying, right? It doesn't. If something is a choice, it's not a mandate, and employment doesn't hinge on this thing, then why are we requiring it and essentially demanding, if you will, a reporting of something that's not a condition of employment?
Commissioner Howell, Mike Fessinger, Assistant County Counselor. The only slight correction I would make to what you said is that this booster collection component would not necessarily be a condition of employment because they're still fully vaccinated. They technically may be subject to some level of discipline if they don't submit booster documentation, but also there's no mechanism in the county reaching out and asking for that actively. So how would we know whether they've been boosted or not? I think that this portion of the policy needs to be there, as Anna said, to put us in line with the mandate, but I don't think it's going to see any real function in practice.
Okay, I guess I'll accept your answer, but to me it's nonsensical. I don't understand why we essentially threaten someone with termination with something that's not required, which is what this is actually saying.
Well, again, I don't think that there's a termination component to the booster verification because they're fully vaccinated. So
But you did actually use the word disciplinary. You used the word discipline in your comment just a moment ago. So if someone doesn't comply with this, they get a booster, don't report that, somehow there might be some discipline action against that employee for not reporting it.
Possibly, but I think in practice, I don't see that happening.
Okay. Well, I don't like our documentation. I don't like our policy to set up something that doesn't make sense, and that to me doesn't. Maybe nobody else agrees with me, but that doesn't make sense to me. I have one other question. I'll just say this about that. I would prefer to see that deleted out of here, but I think I'm going to lose that argument. So nevertheless, my next question is this. Down at the bottom of page 3, it says exemptions will be granted only if they do not cause undue hardship or pose a direct threat to the health and safety of others. We talked yesterday, if someone fills out an exemption form, a religious or medical exemption form, and they complete this form, they have a doctor's signature on the medical form, we're not going to question, I think, the medical doctor. If they get the document filled out by a medical doctor and bring it in, I think it should be approved. Likewise, it doesn't require any chapter and verse for them to get a religious exemption. If they sign this document, as far as I'm concerned, it really must be approved. In fact, I say House Bill 2101 at the state level basically says if you submit a religious exemption form to your employer, it really must be accepted and doesn't require any type of rationale as to why, what are your religious beliefs? I mean, there's no cross check as to someone, the employer questioning that employee's sincerely held beliefs, and so it really must be approved. And so I don't know why it's worded this way, but it says, once again, exemptions will be granted only if they do not cause undue hardship. They really must be, I think, approved. And if they are approved, back to the exemption form, it talks about wearing of masks or other PPE. And although it says it on the exemption forms, it doesn't even allude to that anywhere in this policy. So go ahead. I see you want to go ahead and talk now, please. I'm sorry. I'm asking lots of questions back to back. I apologize for that. Please help me understand.
So the language in the policy, just like the booster, is direct language out of the mandate to put the policy in line with the mandate. As far as the medical exemption, it's under the ADA. So just like any other ADA request, it will be treated just the same. So our staff that is trained in ADA will work with that medical office if they have questions prior to approval.
So my concern here with B is it talks about only if they do not cause undue hardship or pose a direct threat to the health and safety of others. Who determines that? Whether it's a direct threat and poses a health risk to the health and safety of others. If someone is working in an office by themselves, for example, I would argue they're not going to propose a direct threat or, to health and safety of others, for example.
If there was an instance where it was thought that an exemption may lead to that, then it would be a consultation between the department, HR, and legal, as well as the employee.
Is this subject to our policy on, we just passed a policy recently regarding, I forget how to even word it now, but it was an HR policy that talks about the employee has the right to make an appeal, so to speak, for disciplinary action.
With what? Oh, the dispute resolution?
Yeah. Is that policy available to employees that are going to go through this process?
Not for this process. There would be other means. For the medical exemptions, it would go through the ADA process.
Well, to the extent this seems a little bit subjective to me. I would prefer it not to be subjective on the policy, but then I do think that to the extent that we even make a statement on the exemption form that says, if this request is approved, I will be required to wear a face mask and any additional personal protective equipment as designed by the department of my position at all times while working. So then 2 points I made, or 1 point I made yesterday was, if they're working in alone and there's no one around them, I don't know if they ought to be required to wear PPE or face mask or anything if they're independently working. That's number one. But number two, this opens up the idea that they can work in a workplace that's CMS, Medicaid, Medicare, mandated requirements, that they can work in that location with a face mask as a way to mitigate the requirements of a vaccine. That's what this alludes to. But the policy itself does not allude to that at all. So my question is, I guess I have a problem. It seems like there's things missing in this policy that need to be clarified. Are we going to have a chance to tweak this a little bit?
A policy can be reviewed and modified at any time. The policy isn't going to go into the same detail as the procedures, as procedures are fluid as things change. And so the policy is high level and is synced to the mandate so that the policy is following the mandate. How we choose to then apply the policy through those procedures, that's up to our choice.
Can we add to this policy the statement that's in the exemption form? Can we add to this policy so that it's clear in the policy that this is a way for them to manage the mandate if they choose not to get the vaccine, that this is the other option they would have to keep their job, and it should be in the policy? Can we add that to the policy?
So you would like to add the definition and the attestation to the policy?
I think at least the statement that says that if I have an approved exemption, comma, I will be required to wear a face mask and any additional personal protective equipment as designed by my department for my position at all times while working, I would say, in the presence of others. But to me, that would be a reasonable addition to the policy. And that way it's clear that there's at least a door that this person could work with their supervisor, not get the vaccine, wear the necessary equipment, and keep their job.
Just a second.
Okay, Sheena, go ahead.
Thank you. I apologize. I am at home in quarantine myself. Listening to the conversation, I want to add that we have to have those exemptions on file. So if an employee is not going to have the vaccine, as long as they fill out the form for the exemption, it would be reviewed. We need to have that on file. So not having the vaccine and not having an exemption would not make us compliant with the mandate. So we would have to have that even if they were wearing PPE.
Thank you for that comment, Sheena, but I'm not suggesting they don't have an exemption. I'm saying they do have an exemption. They filled out the appropriate paperwork and the exemption's been approved. In that situation, there should be something in the policy that reflects that they're an exempted employee from the mandate and they have to wear PPE as determined by the supervisor when they're in the presence of others as a mitigation that's different than the vaccine. So Their choice is vaccine or wearing the required PPE in the presence of others in the workplace as a way to keep their job and not necessarily have the vaccine. I mean, again, this is with an approved exemption. And I think under HB 2101, I believe it is, I don't think we have much choice about whether we would or would not accept these exemptions. If they fill out the form and give it to us, according to the state law, the special session last year, I believe we have to accept the exemptions. There's no choice here.
And we will accept and review all of those exceptions, but we have to make sure that we review each of those on a case-by-case basis.
I have no problem with reviewing them. Again, I'll just say, though, if they fill out the appropriate paperwork and they submit that to the employer, according to state law, we must approve them. And when we do approve them, if they work in a CMS, mandated, vaccinated, vaccine-required workplace setting, according to the exemption form that we're giving them, and by the way, this was someone else's language. We didn't write this. You told me that yesterday. This was recommended language. That language should be reflected in the policy that says, I'm an exempt employee, and as such, and I work in a CMS workplace that requires a vaccine, but because I have an exemption, I will be willing to wear the necessary equipment in the workplace as a mitigation for not having the vaccine when I'm working in the presence of others. To me, that's a reasonable thing to put in the policy.
Sheena?
Commissioner Howell, if I could address one issue. The state law you're referring to will not supersede the federal law in this case, and the federal mandate. So this is an area where you have state law, which is in conflict with federal law. We can follow state law and perhaps be in violation of federal law and give up federal grant money if we want, but we have to follow state laws, our federal law as I understand it.
Does the federal law lay out the details of how we should accept or not accept an exemption application? Because the state law does. If the federal government doesn't speak to it, I think the only law we have then is the state law.
All I can tell you, sir, is we'll continue to look at this, but we're following federal law. As far as I know that all the people working on this have been following the federal mandate, and we're just trying to come up with a policy that complies with that federal mandate. Whether that complies with state law, I don't know. I just know the federal law is going to trump state law in this situation.
I guess I'm saying is I'm not seeing anything yet that says the federal law has told us how to process an exemption application where we make a determination we may approve some and not approve others under a federal guidance of some sort. With absence of that guidance from the feds, the state law speaks to it specifically, that when they make an application for an exemption, it must be approved by the employer.
Sheena? Sheena, are you on?
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing it.
Sheena, this is Commissioner Dennis. And first of all, I certainly hope you're doing well. But let me ask you one direct question. Do you see any time that HR is not going to comply with any of the exemptions?
I cannot foresee that we would not review and approve all the appropriate measures.
And
we can enforce as much as the law will allow us to enforce.
very good. And if an employee submits an exemption and their immediate supervisor says that doesn't apply, would HR take action to enforce the exemption?
Yes, HR would have full control over the review and approval of all exemptions. It would not be up to the supervisor.
Okay. Well, then I don't see that we have an issue on what we've passed up to this point. I think it's time that we move on. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Consent agenda.
Mr. Stoltz.
Chairman, Commission Tom Stoltz, County Manager's Office, recommend approval of consent items N through S as in Sam.
Thank you. I move that we approve November through Sierra. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz? Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to recess the Board of County Commissioners meeting and call to order the governing body of Fire District Number 1. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Roll call. Commissioner Meitzner?
Present.
Commissioner Cruz? Commissioner Howe?
Present.
Commissioner Lopez? Chairman Dennis.
Present. Next item, please.
Public agenda.
I have not received anybody that wants to speak. I did not see anything in any of the communications that came in. So next item, please.
Consideration of minutes. Item A. Fire meeting minutes of November 17th, 2021.
Thank you. I move that we approve items Alpha and Bravo. We have a motion and a second. I don't see any discussion. Mr. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Meitzner? Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howe?
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez? Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next item, please.
Consent agenda.
Chairman and Commissioners, Tom Stolz again, County Manager's Office, recommend approval of consent item C. Charles.
I move that we approve item Charlie. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howe?
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez? Chairman Dennis.
Aye. And that's the last item. I'd like to adjourn the governing body of the Board of Fire District Number 1 and call back to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for January 19th. Next item, please.
Legislative issues.
Thank you, Akeem.
Chairman, Commissioners, Akeem Asher, Communications Director, again for the record. Just here to provide you an update on legislative issues. As you know, we had the opening of session. I was able to spend some time up in Topeka with Jason and Jessica Watkins of Watkins Public Strategies, and we handed out our legislative palm card as well as our little business card with our QR code, which is easily accessible for lawmakers to use to get onto the Sedgwick County website. In addition to that, we completed our joint platform with the City of Wichita as well as the Chamber, Wichita Chamber of Commerce, and Andrew Weens was able to go up last week as well and hand the joint platform out. So we've done both at this point. We have resurrected a weekly meeting with Jason and Jessica, and then also Commissioner Leadership, to basically go over issues from the previous week and then also look at issues coming up. One of the big issues that we talked about was Senate Bill 181. This is the commonly referred to as the elevator bill. There is a hearing today in the House, Fed, and State Committee. According to Jason and Jessica, we are in good shape based on the changes that were made in that Senate bill last year. And so if there's more details, Justin Wagner is here to kind of give kind of an oversight of what those changes were, to kind of recap us on those. Community corrections, as you know, as a part of our platform, Glenna Martins presented and then also held a delegation meeting asking for a number of dollars to get her department up to staffing level, and then we also retain staff as well. The governor presented her state of the state address, and in there she had $8 million for community corrections. As you know, I think it was 14.3 or 14.2 that Glenda's asking for. Doesn't quite meet that threshold, right, if you're looking at across the entire state. But there are a number of other opportunities for us to try to get those dollars in order to meet her need so that she can continue to do her work that she's so desperately asking for. Lastly, Commissioners, the food sales tax item. This is kind of a big thing in the political sphere that's been roaming around. However, there are two bills that are roaming around the Capitol at this point. The biggest note, and we're looking for, I'm going to talk to Jason later on today as well, just to get more details because they just came out yesterday that we were briefed on. Two main parts of this, Commissioners, and I think it's important that you're aware of this. Well, the state will eliminate the food sales tax. However, the bills would, in both bills, they would allow counties to still collect those food sales tax. So it really kind of puts local government in kind of conundrum to kind of figure out whether it collects those sales tax dollars or not. as opposed to what the state is doing. So just wanted you to be aware of that. That is the update that I have at this point, Commissioners. I'm not sure if Mike or Tom has any update to add to that. And like I said, Jason is here for Senate Bill 181 as well.
Thank you, Akeem. I appreciate it. Commissioners, do you have any questions on the legislative issues coming up? I don't see any. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Next item, please.
Committee reports.
Do any commissioners have any committee reports? I don't see anything. Next item, please.
Other.
Any commissioners have anything for other? I don't see anything. This is going pretty fast.
Hey,
Oh,
Chairman.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Meitzner, you screwed it up.
No, that's right. Just a totally personal. Today is my father's birthday, and the family's been all over it. He's passed away, but I continue to have comments from public that knew my father, and they always ask and say what a great man he was, and I agree that he was. He is passed away, but today was his 95th birthday, and I just want to wish him happy birthday and tell Mom hi while you're up there. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Meitzner. I appreciate this. Next item, please.
Executive session.
Commissioner Lopez.
I move that the Board of County Commissioners recess into executive session for 30 minutes until 11:01 for consultation with an attorney for the county regarding matters deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship on the subject of contract negotiations, and that the Board of County Commissioners returns to this room from executive session at 11:01.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. We are in recess. Well, welcome back. We have just come out of executive session. I want to announce that no binding action was taken. I do have one other thing I'd like to mention today. Currently, the board for the Sedgwick County Zoo is in session. I would have liked to have been able to make it over there, but unfortunately I wasn't able to. But I wanted to let everyone know that later today, the Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens will announce that Dr. Jeff Ettling as their new president and CEO. And the board is now meeting to discuss that. Dr. Ettling has done a great job for us. We appreciate everything that he's done. He's put together a 25-year master plan. Things have been changing greatly as a result of his leadership, and we're going to miss him greatly. In the meantime, we're going to have Tim Kaufman run the zoo until such time as the Zoological Board can find a replacement for Dr. Ettling. But in the meantime, we want to wish Dr. Ettling the best in his future. He's been a great leader. We sincerely thank him very much. Does anything else need to come before the board today? Seeing nothing, we're adjourned. Thank you all.